Hello guys, welcome to a new video on Tower of God New World, and in this video I'm going to do the character review for Revolution Bomb. I'm going to go over the usual points, so we're going to talk about how good this unit is, and then we're going to look at the skills, Revolution, exclusive equipment, gear, ignition weapon, Rapport, and finally some team recommendations. I already mentioned in the previous character review, the one for Kunagero, the changes that I make into the spreadsheet to the investment tab, and I'm not going to talk about them again. It's just the tier list that's been added and incorporated in the investment tab, and also the revolution information with the T4, T5 and T6 effects, plus the priority of the subnodes directly integrated in here. So that's mostly it. Once I've finished it, I will obviously make a video explaining all the changes, and yeah, but for now, just have a quick look here, and that's more or less it. So yeah, for the first point, how good this unit is, I will say that BAM, it was a bit of a disappointment at first for me, but because I didn't really try him with a lot of investment or with the right investment. Because a 3 red is kind of meh, you can just use him for utility potential, but it's not really going to be a great carry. If you want him to be a carry, as most mages, you have to invest a ton on them because they need those subnodes. And especially him, it doesn't really have good main nodes, so most of his power is coming from the subnodes. The guaranteed crits, the additional crit damage, the additional attack, the special move peers, a lot of good stuff that mages have access to, and they really help him a lot. Also, I was kind of trying to play with 100% resistances on my stream, and that's definitely not something you want to do. Go full damage, go crit damage slot 4 and magic pierce slot 5. He has good enough survivability. So yeah, if you want him to function as a DPS, be prepared to spend a lot of currency. Otherwise, if you just want to use him as a utility unit, then you can slot him in a lot of teams, and it will properly work, kind of thing. So yeah, that's more or less all I wanted to say about him. Let's have a quick look at the skills as well. So the first one is the passive. It has two parts to it, and the one I really like, kind of, is the first one. And the second half is a bit, I don't know, not that great, but we're going to talk about that in a second. So the first part is that he's going to activate the orb defense mode at the start of the battle, blocking one attack skill. And if an enemy skill is blocked, he is going to deal damage. Pretty negligible, is only 200% attack, but okay. Silence them for 3 seconds, really, really good. And also, this effect can be reactivated after 4 seconds. This is effectively a skill block every 4 seconds, which is good enough because he's a ranged unit. He's not going to be hit by a lot of things, so this helps quite a lot. Unfortunately, when he blocks the skill, you take 1 damage, which I believe interrupts the L4 piece effect. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it does. So for now, but we're going to go in more detail in the ignition weapon section. I don't really know which set to recommend for him. Rafflesia is kind of countered by this passive, because Rafflesia wants you to be affected by the status effect, and if you block the skill, that's not happening. You can still make it work if the enemies have a lot of AoE effects that are like hitting you even if you are in the backline. Then yes, Rafflesia can work, and his special move is really good, so definitely is a plus, and he's usable, but not 100% optimal. And same thing for L. So I don't know, but we'll see. Hopefully in February, one of the new ignition weapon set will be built for him and for white as well. But okay, enough of that. So that was the first part of the passive. If we look at the second part, this is what I don't really like too much, and that is when BAM falls below 40% HP, he becomes invincible for 4 seconds. And here, all good. He's then going to use the Thorn and recover HP equal to 80% of his max HP. Really good. Is a cheat death mechanic kind of thing. It's like you're getting one-shotted, then you're full life, and that's okay. The thing is, you have a lot of invincibility frames in this like guy's kit, so he has a lot of invincibility frames. He is rarely going to go below that threshold. This is also one of the things why I decided to entirely remove the resistances and just go full damage, because if I don't do that, then that's going to be a problem to even reach this 40%. Obviously, at higher deficits, that's not a problem, even if you have higher resistances. But in my scenario, it's still quite a bit tricky. And you kind of want this effect to be applied, because it's like not this one. This one is okay, not insane, but the Revolution 5 effect would be really good. Would, if you can actually trigger it. The thing is, if you trigger it once, it means that you are in a situation where your bomb is at the risk of dying. And if you don't trigger it at all, then you're losing out on a lot of damage. So it's really weird the way it's designed, because this effect is not triggered until the passive is. And the same applies to this, unfortunately. So yeah, until the end of the battle, after you go below your 40% HP, you're going to have a 50% magic resistance reduction on the skill hits, kind of thing. So pretty good. Is basically 50% magic pierce on your skills. Good. Then for Revolution 5, we have that after you trigger this effect, you also gain 30% magic pierce, 40% special move pierce, 80% lifesteal. Okay, whatever. Until the end of the battle, and this buff cannot be removed with buff removal skills. Unfortunately, again, it won't really happen frequently. Like, there are a lot of fights where it just doesn't receive damage, and that's impacting his damage. But it's just weird. I don't get it. I mean, when it works, amazing, but when it doesn't, you're just losing out a lot of damage. But okay, we'll see. Now for the other, like for the first active skill, we can see the True Blue Horror is going to become invincible while flying and shoots the Shinsu cannon 8 times at a random enemy, each time dealing 300% of his attack as damage and reducing the enemy defense by 30% for 20 seconds, max 8 stacks. This is really a shit ton of defense shred. And yeah, this is also where most of his burst damage comes from, because his special move is more damage over time. This one is more take one enemy and try to take it down. So overall, really good skill. After that, he's going to descend rapidly and deal 800% of his attack as damage to nearby enemies, knocking them back for 4 seconds. So also a bit of crowd control here. Overall, really good active skill. Is a bit unfortunate that it's random. It gives you that kind of RNG component to your fight. You might get some good luck and get rid of an annoying enemy. Other times, just attack some random shit. So yeah. Overall good, especially when there is only one enemy left. This is really good burst, but it's an active skill, so unless you're using Albelda Revolution 5, you're not going to use it that frequently. Then we have the other active skill that is going to teleport bomb to an enemy, absorbing Shinsu and pulling enemies into a fan-shaped area, immobilizing them for 4 seconds. This area is not too big, so the grouping is not insane, but there is some grouping, so it's still nice. And also the crowd control is quite good. And then it's going to deal 1200% of his attack as damage. Fine, not the biggest multiplier, but still quite okay. Then we have the special move. Most, like, probably the skill with the highest damage that he has in his kit is, like, the AoE is massive on this thing. The crowd control is really good. The thing is damage over time. So it's not bursty. Enemies with a lot of shields or heals could counter it potentially, but it's still a really good special move. So he's basically going to become invincible and summon a triple orb to cast Stardust, and then he's going to cause a star explosion in the area with the most enemies, dealing 600% of Bama's attack as damage 3 times and sending enemies airborne on the final explosion. Is then going to leave some AoE effect on the ground for 20 seconds at level 5, I think it's 10 seconds at level 1, dealing 300% of attack as damage every second. This is really a lot of damage, especially because you can have 3 areas all active at the same time, which is up to 900% attack as damage every second. Really, really strong. He's then going to have the Revolution 4 effect. That is where you kind of want to stop if you want to use him as a support. It would be enough to have the Revolution 4. He's going to reduce the swiftness of enemies hit by first thorn fragments, so by the special move, by 40, and movement speed by 30%, max 3 stacks. So up to 120 swiftness decrease and 90% movement speed decrease. Really good debuff as well. So overall, the kit is solid, there is a lot of damage, it's just not bursty. So he's not going to have the burst damage that a White or a Kaiser have, that you can clearly see when the enemy is being focused, they're going to explode. That's not going to be the case with BAM. It's more AoE based, more damage over time oriented. Still really solid, really good, but nothing too insane, unfortunately. It doesn't have attack increases in his kit. His magic resistance decrease is hidden behind the fact that he has to first lose HP and trigger the passive, so kind of weird. The defense shred on the other end is really good, but it's unfortunately single target. So he has some issues, but overall is a really good unit. Then I would say we can have, well no, let's first have a look at the Revolution investment also for the subnodes, I would say. And for that I can also move it maybe a bit on the right so that you can also see the new Revolution part here. There is just the information on the tier 4, 5 and 6. Then the priority on the nodes here, most of them are really important actually. And as I wrote here, most subnodes for mages are extremely important to boost their DPS. It will require a lot of resources. He has great utility even without investment. So if you don't want to invest in him, you can use him for utility. If you want him to be a DPS, be prepared to spend a shit ton of resources, up to 106,000 of the orange fragments. So yeah, I haven't fully invested in him. Like this max cooldown reduction, I still haven't bought, even though one of the active skills is really good, the one that shoots at the random enemy, but I really didn't want to do it. So yeah, this is more or less the investment that you have to be prepared for. So I would say in general up to 15, any more than that is generally not needed. And for me it was even overkill because afterwards I reworked my 3 essence a bit more and added some more crit rate, so that I'm way overkill. I could have just used 14 points instead of 15, but doesn't matter, it's just 1 point. You obviously want all the swiftness that you can, all the attack that you can, because it's one of the few sources of it. Crit damage increase, special move pierce. Those are the most important ones. And yeah, max cooldown reduction is also extremely important. I don't think I will be investing in it because right now it's doing fine at my current deficit, and I want to save those resources for a future unit. So that's kind of the investment that I will give to him. And yeah, that's more or less it for this point. We can quickly look at the exclusive equipment too to see what's been added there. We have the level 1 that's going to improve on the single target skill that applies the defense shred. Is going to have an increased attack coefficient by 100% each time the cannon strikes the same target. which again, really good in single target scenarios. Kinda sucks if there are multiple enemies, but it's still a really good skill. That's where most of his bursts come from, but again, when there is only one enemy left. Or if you're extremely lucky and you hit all 8 attacks on the same one, great, but we'll see. We'll see. Then we have level 2, True Blackwing, Floral Butterfly, Pure Syntech. Like, what the fuck are those names? This is basically the skill that teleports to the enemies and then try to group them up. Grants invincibility. It's just something that they didn't add in the base kit, they decided to add in the exclusive equipment, just because why not? Then we have level 3. This is also quite good and important because, as we mentioned before, this is where most of his burst comes from in single target scenarios. When you are hit by a melee attack, so a close range attack, the cooldown is reset on that skill and can only happen once every 8 seconds. Not gonna happen that frequently because again, he is a ranged unit, he will be in the back line. Not really going to be attacked that often, but against some enemies can definitely happen. So it's a good thing to have because once it triggers, then you're going to have invincibility for the duration of this active skill. Level 4 is a bit troll. I don't really like that second part of the passive. The level 4 is going to improve it so that it gives you 1000 energy. Basically, it makes you cast the special move immediately and reduce the remaining cooldown of each active skill by 80%. Basically, these triggers, you're going to cast the special move. Once the cast of the special move is over, you have the other 2 active skills up, which is a lot of invincibility back to back to back. Not too bad. I would say if you are in a scenario where the passive triggers, you have a lot of buffs, and then you cast all the skills one after the other. But still, I don't like that passive. I think it's really used in very few scenarios. And when it is used, it means that you are at a disadvantage already. So if you cannot make it up with this final burst that it gives you, I don't know. Like, it is really tricky. It just gives you one special move and one cast of each active to say, okay, try to finish the fight now or lose. That's kind of the vibe that this passive gives me. So yeah, that's pretty much it, I would say, for the exclusive equipment. If we look at the gear, the only piece that you really need is lot 2 for additional crit rate and crit damage, mainly the crit damage, but okay. And the second piece would be this lot 4. If you want some more survivability, I think it's fine. It's an acceptable investment. And the accuracy, like slot 1 and slot 3, not needed. I wouldn't recommend leveling them unless you desperately need the accuracy. Maybe if you are an early account, then I could see that being the case, but most people won't have a problem with accuracy. And now we can have a look at the ignition weapon. As I mentioned before, it's not really easy to determine right now what to use. I would say L is going to be the most safe pick, even though you have that kind of anti-synergy with the passive, but the same thing applies to Rafflesia too. So you could either use L, Rafflesia, Sela, those kind of sets. Sela is just the weirdest option from my point of view, but you can definitely use it. You will give up a bit of damage just for some more potential survivability, but you don't need it. So I think, actually, let me do it live. I will just change it to Rafflesia. But again, there's really no best in slot here. There is no set where you say, how good, this is a great set for him. No. You could go hybrid, 2-piece, 2-piece. The thing I don't like about that is that once you face an enemy that removes buff, that's gone. So I don't really like that, but I don't know. I don't really know, guys. I would say L, but I really hope that in February we're going to get a set for him and for skill-based units. So yeah, that's more or less the idea. As I already mentioned, slot 4, crit damage. Slot 5 Magic Pierce. You don't need the resistances at all, so that's pretty much it. And yeah, for the next point is just the usual report. Just get level 6 if you need the accuracy, or stop at level 4 if you don't. But again, it's so cheap, you might as well get it to level 6. And then we have the final part, which is the team recommendations. For this one, again, let's go to Arena Simulation. And here you could even just use a mono blue team, because blue has a lot of attack buffers. That is something that this guy likes. So you can use a Lororo to buff him. You can use Blanc, not that useful unless you have a mostly ranged team and she's going to cast the AoE heal on the backline. Otherwise her attack buff is not even going to be applied, so I wouldn't bother with her, to be honest. Garam is a great unit for the special move Pierce. Unfortunately, mages already have some, so it's a bit less impactful than on another unit that's not a mage, but still is a really, really big buff. She also has attack increases and a lot of energy regen. Well, not a lot, but some energy regen. She also has defense shred and resistance shred on the enemies, resistance increase on your team, some good crowd control, a really good unit overall. Other units in the blue team that you could use in terms of supports, I would stop at those two. They are pretty good already. Then as a frontline unit, you could have someone like Data Machine. She also has a magic resistance shred, which this guy would have if he goes below the 40% HP threshold, but otherwise he's a bit lacking also on that part. So she's fine, but the other two guys are also okay. For the last slot, you could go for like a Blurod to pick an annoying enemy, and if you want him to try and focus a bit on that guy, that will depend. This could potentially be a comp if we want to stay on the mono blue, but that's not always recommended. I would say if you are not planning on staying mono blue, obviously Albelda is kind of a no-brainer. She's going to give him additional attack, which he lacks, and the reset on the active skills, which is even more survivability. The skill block, that's going to really prevent him from taking any sort of damage. Really insanity. So with Albelda, this guy cannot die, basically. He's already very, very tanky. If you add Albelda to the mix, he cannot die. I would say Anniversary Iwa is one of the few ones that, like one of the few scenarios where I would say you don't really need her. So I would say not use, don't use her as a unit for BAM. Not needed at all. And other good units they can use are always the ones that regen the energy for him, because he has a really good special move. So Nare will be fine. I would say that obviously Anak will be fine. You might even use, if you're really kind of crazy, but as you can see, like it's messing up the setup quite a bit, you could use 002 to provide the additional crit damage to the front line. I wouldn't recommend it, especially because this guy has a physical resistance shred with a revolution, which doesn't synergize well, but potentially you could do that. Could do the same also with yellow, even though you lose out on the crit rate. You could add a Gusten just for the attack buff and a bit of defense, not that needed, but still there. You could go with Bam Bam just for additional energy if you really want to. Not too important. This team is too weird though, so I wouldn't recommend it. You can go for Kunagero too. He has magic resistance shred. He has even more defense shred, which is not that needed in this kind of team, but he has HP recovery block, which is annoying to deal with, especially with all the damage over time that he has. So he kind of fixes a weakness for him, so that's good. And yeah, I would say those are kind of the teams. You can use whichever unit you want instead of data machine. You don't really have to use her. If you don't have her, well, I guess most people will have her and she will work even at 0 dupes. So that's not a problem, but you can use also Endorsey if you have her, but she's going to die quickly at higher deficits. I never mentioned Traumray, but you can just slot this guy wherever you want. And it will be fine here as well, because he has some sort of grouping in the way that he's going to push everyone on the backline and do so consistently. So that's quite nice for his damage over time that's based on an AoE. You could do that, and he's going to provide also an attack buff for BAM. But yeah, still not sure which team it works best on, but definitely it will perform well even with some less used teammates like Leroy or whatever. You can use him as a support for a Kaiser, and maybe you run something like this. Instead of Garam, you could use someone else at this point to buff Kaiser's damage, though she doesn't have a lot of great supports in the blue element at the moment, other than this guy, if he survives. So probably Garam would stay one of the best picks. Yeah, this is kind of the idea. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions on this. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. I will be streaming on January 2nd at this point because, yeah, the update is on Thursday and not on Wednesday this time. I just don't know when, probably around 6 p.m. No, I'm not sure. Maybe 8 p.m. Central European time. We'll see. I will let you know with scheduling on YouTube. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you then. Bye.